They told me Grandma had collapsed, that she needed urgent medical care, and that my place was by her bedside. They insisted they couldn't risk my fragile emotions on such a long cruise. My parents' final gift, they said, was to protect me. So I stayed behind, fretting and praying for Grandma's recovery, fighting back tears as I waved them off on what was supposed to be our once-in-a-lifetime family vacation. Only none of it was real. Grandma had never been ill. The lie was crafted to keep me at home, and when my parents returned, they had no idea what they'd unleashed in me. I remember the moment everything changed, as though it seared into my memory with a hot iron. My name is Samantha, and until that dreadful lie, I thought my parents cared for me, truly. Sure, I'd had my teenage spats with them, arguments about curfews, rebellious phases, the occasional battle of wills, but deep down, I believed they wanted what was best for me. When they first announced the family cruise, I was so excited I could barely sleep. It wasn't just another vacation, it was a celebration. My older brother, James, had recently graduated from college with honours, and our parents wanted to treat the whole family to a magnificent trip. A luxury cruise across the Caribbean, one entire week of sun, sea, and the promise of endless adventures. I spent days obsessively poring over the cruise itinerary, snorkeling in crystal clear waters, exploring hidden coves, indulging in lavish meals aboard a colossal ship that housed everything from lavish dining rooms to theatres. I was already planning out my outfits, counting down the days, imagining the warm breeze tangling my hair as I stood on the ship's deck. Then, 3 days before departure, Mum knocked on my bedroom door. Her voice was unnaturally soft, quivering with worry if only I'd known to question that trembling tone. She told me Grandma had been admitted to the hospital, that her heart was failing, and she was in critical condition. The words hammered at my chest. Grandma was my anchor, my calm amidst life's hurricanes. She was the one who soothed me when I felt misunderstood at home, who encouraged my creative writing and told me bedtime stories long after I'd outgrown them. I couldn't fathom losing her. My instincts took over. I had to go to her. Mum explained that the doctors didn't know if Grandma would make it through the week. They said it could be her last hours or days. That's why, my parents insisted, I should stay behind in our hometown rather than embark on a trip that would be an unthinkable emotional burden for me if Grandma were to die while I was away. In the swirl of heartbreak, something caught my attention. My brother didn't seem particularly distraught. He kept fiddling with his phone, glancing at me, then at our parents, with a strange look on his face. But I was blinded by concern. If Grandma was gravely ill, there was no time to question anything else. So I agreed, without a second thought. The day they left for the cruise, Dad gave me a tight-lipped hug, promising they'd keep in touch. "Take care of your grandmother," he urged, pressing the car keys into my hand so I could drive to the hospital any time I needed. Mum stroked my hair as if I were still a child, her eyes brimming with feigned sadness. And James patted my back awkwardly, muttering something I didn't fully register. Then they were gone, heading to the port for the ship's departure, leaving me behind in a house that suddenly felt colder and emptier than ever. No sooner had they left than I grabbed my bag, sprinted to the car, and rushed to the hospital. My heart hammered in my chest, tears stinging my eyes. I anticipated the worst. The entire drive, I couldn't stop imagining Grandma with tubes in her arms, her frail body lost in a tangle of machines. The mere thought made me tremble so violently I could barely hold the steering wheel. When I arrived at the hospital, I practically sprinted through the halls to the reception desk. The nurse behind the counter scanned through her files, her brow furrowing. "I'm sorry, miss. We have no record of your grandmother, not under that name." A wave of confusion crashed over me. Had they spelled her name incorrectly? I double-checked. Still nothing. The nurse even widened her search to the entire system. There was simply no record of my grandmother being admitted, not even in the ER. My first instinct was that there had been some misunderstanding, maybe a transfer to another facility. I tried all the nearby hospitals, calling them from my phone, only to be met with the same response: no one by that name. I could barely breathe. Confusion and dread clung to me like fog. I drove to Grandma's house next, which was about an hour away, on the outskirts of town. The old, quaint property greeted me with its overgrown yard and the pink roses Grandma always tended with so much love. My heart drummed in my ears as I walked up the creaky steps, half expecting paramedics or some sign of distress. Grandma opened the door, hale and hearty, bright as a summer morning. The relief that flooded me was mixed with a paralyzing sense of betrayal. She gazed at me with gentle concern. "Sam? What's going on, dear? Why aren't you on the cruise?" I could scarcely form words. My entire reality twisted in that moment. With shaky confusion, I tried to explain the story, that she was supposedly in the hospital, at death's door. Her face darkened with surprise. She ushered me in, made me sit on her worn-out sofa, and listened intently as I recounted how I'd been told she was dying. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and something like fury flickered in her eyes. Grandma never got truly angry, but that day, I saw how the lie my parents wove cut straight to her core. My parents had prevented me from going on the cruise. Why? What for? We couldn't imagine a reason that would justify such cruelty. Grandma held me as I cried, her hands stroking my back. The frustration, the confusion, the heartbreak all swelled together. We spent the evening huddled together, puzzling over my parents' deceit. We considered the possibility that they might not trust me to be well behaved on the ship, or that they wanted me to watch over Grandma without explaining the real reason. But it all seemed so outlandish. If they wanted a caretaker for Grandma, why not just ask me? Under the flickering light of her living room lamp, Grandma and I promised each other one thing. We wouldn't keep silent about this. We didn't know the full story yet, but we were determined to find out. One thing was clear. I was angry deeply, righteously, heartbreakingly angry. But beneath that rage was a bruised soul, shattered by the parents I'd trusted all my life. The trust was gone. In its place was a seed of something dark and fierce that began to bloom in my chest, a need for truth, a need for retribution. That night, I stayed in Grandma's guest bedroom, wide awake, replaying every conversation, every detail, every odd glance from my brother. It was only the beginning of a dark journey into my family's secrets, and I had no idea how treacherous it would become. The next morning, Grandma and I shared a quiet breakfast of scrambled eggs and toast. My mind was racing with questions, fueled by restless sleep and the betrayal gnawing at my heart. She must have noticed, because she gently patted my hand and gave me a reassuring nod. "Sam, I'm going to support you through this," she said. "Whatever your parents have done, they can't hide from it forever." But I knew exposing them wasn't as simple as storming back home and demanding answers. They were at sea, unreachable. My brother James had been in on it, right? Or was he merely playing along? He'd given me that odd look before leaving had he known. My emotions twisted in confusion as I tried to parse out potential reasons. My phone buzzed around noon. A text from Dad. "How's Grandma doing? Any updates from the hospital?" Reading those words felt like a punch in the gut. How dare he? With trembling fingers, I typed back, "She's fine. She's actually at home. In fact, she never went to the hospital." Care to explain? I waited, but the status of the message showed it hadn't been delivered. They must still be in some remote area, out of cell reception. My anger rose like a tide, unstoppable and fierce. Feeling restless, I decided to drive back to my parents' house, my childhood home. I needed to see if they had left anything behind, any clue that might explain why they'd concocted such a vicious lie. Grandma accompanied me, both of us wary of what we might find. Inside, the house was eerily still. It smelled faintly of dust and leftover laundry detergent. Photos of our family vacations and holiday gatherings adorned the walls. My gaze caught one from the previous year's Christmas. My father standing beside me, his arm around my shoulder, beaming with pride. It felt like looking at a stranger. We searched every room, opening drawers, scanning counters, rummaging through mail. Grandma was cautious, reminding me not to jump to conclusions or do anything drastic. But I couldn't silence the thunderous pounding in my heart. What if there was something truly sinister behind this? What if it wasn't just a petty reason? Finally, after rummaging through the home office, we discovered a small locked drawer in Dad's old writing desk. Memories rushed back. He used to store everything in there: documents, passports, family pictures, insurance files. Sometimes, he kept them locked just for privacy. I tried the obvious keys around the house, but none fit. Grandma nodded, and I retrieved a small screwdriver from the garage, carefully prying the lock until it clicked open. Within, I found papers, legal documents, insurance forms. Nothing seemed outwardly suspicious until I noticed an odd notation in what looked like a binder for the cruise itself. It listed passenger names, the cabin numbers, but mine wasn't there. Instead of Samantha Turner, the space was vacant with a neat line drawn through it. Scrawled in the margin was my mother's handwriting. Ref. Sam number keep from going. Keep from going! My voice quivered as I read it aloud, my stomach twisting. They had decided, for some reason, that I was not to be on that ship. Grandma pressed her hand against my shoulder, her face etched with concern. It's going to be all right, Sam. This is proof. We'll ask them straight out when they return. My mind reeled with possible reasons. Did they think I would embarrass them? Did they not want me there because of some cost issue? It didn't add up. My parents were never particularly wealthy, but they planned this trip for months. Excluding me at the last minute didn't make any sense. Fueled by the knowledge that they'd done more than simply spin a lie, they'd planned it weeks in advance, I felt my anger deepen. This was a betrayal that went beyond just missing a vacation. It was a violation of trust. Each minute that passed, I felt less like their beloved daughter and more like an unwelcome outsider. That day, I decided to stay at Grandma's house rather than sleep under my parents' roof. Their home felt suffocating. Grandma gladly welcomed me, refusing to let me wallow alone. In her sanctuary, the rooms were bright and airy, and the walls seemed to whisper comfort. She let me stay in her old guest bedroom, the one with the floral bedspread and the lamp shaped like a seashell. Being there felt safe, protected from the swirling maelstrom of confusion that my childhood home had become. Over the next few days, the tension churned inside me like a storm at sea. I tried calling James, but I got the same message, unreachable. I sent him texts, voicemails, all with no reply. The fact that he had known about this from the start, at least in part, haunted me. My brother was someone I'd admired. We were close during his college years, even though he was older and sometimes acted superior. Would he have participated in such a mean-spirited trick? Or was he powerless to stop it? Grandma and I speculated about potential reasons. She recalled a conversation with my mother a few months back, something about my irresponsible behavior, but she couldn't recall details. Sure, I'd had a rebellious streak as a teenager. I got a tattoo when I turned 18, had an argument or two about my future ambitions, but nothing so severe to warrant them fabricating a medical emergency just to keep me off a family trip. The strangest thing was that my parents had always insisted on togetherness. Family was supposed to come first, especially to my father, who championed family vacations as the best bonding experiences. It was his long-standing tradition. So why this about face? The question gnawed at me. Did they need me out of the picture for something that would happen on the cruise? My imagination ran wild. Could it be related to an inheritance? A hidden affair? A business deal? The possibilities swirled, each more absurd than the last. But in my family, we never had any big secrets, or so I'd thought. Those days passed slowly. I alternated between despair and red-hot fury, pacing through Grandma's halls. Eventually, I decided that moping wouldn't solve anything. I had to channel my anger productively. By day, I pored over every scrap of paper I could find, searching for some tangible truth. By night, I tried to quell the nightmares that plagued me, dreams of my parents shutting me out, physically locking me in a hospital room while they laughed and sailed away. Grandma tried to keep me calm, suggesting we watch movies or bake cookies to ease my mind. But the betrayal was too raw. Sometimes I'd snap at her or break down in tears, and she would hold me, reminding me that I wasn't alone. It was her unwavering support that kept me from spiraling completely. Deep inside me, a different kind of resolve began to form, a determination not just to find answers, but to confront my parents in a way they would never forget. I felt a yearning for justice, for revenge, though at that stage, I didn't even know what shape that revenge would take. I only knew I deserved an explanation, and I deserved to see them pay, in whatever form that took my parents, the very people who had lied so cruelly. Perhaps no brand of retribution could mend the emotional rift, but at least it could shine a light on the truth and hold them accountable. As the days ticked by, I counted down the hours until their return. The entire cruise lasted 1 week. Each morning that dawned, I mentally checked off one less day until the big confrontation. By the time day 5 arrived, I was practically pacing in circles, brimming with adrenaline, half tempted to drive straight to the harbour and meet them. But I decided to wait, to let them come home unsuspecting. I wanted the advantage. They would walk through the door, expecting me to have believed their twisted story. Instead, they'd find a daughter who knew everything and was ready to fight back. On the 6th day, something unusual happened. My phone lit up with a text notification from James. "Hey Sam, is everything okay? Haven't heard from you." My heart hammered. This was my chance. Without missing a beat, I fired back a barrage of messages, demanding he explain what was going on. But no answer came. I called him repeatedly, and finally, on the 3rd attempt, he picked up. "Sam?" His voice was crackly and distant, the connection poor. "James, what is happening? Why did Mom and Dad lie about Grandma being in the hospital?" My words poured out in a rush, laced with frustration and betrayal. "She's fine. She's at home. I've been there for a week, alone, while you guys are off on a cruise." A pause crackled through the line. "Listen, I can't talk about this right now." His tone was guarded. "We'll explain when we're back, okay?" My rage flared. "No, not okay. You were in on it, weren't you? You knew. It's complicated, Sam. Please trust me. We'll be home soon." He sounded flustered, as though he hadn't expected me to be so direct. "I'll call you later if I can." The call dropped. I stared at my phone, anger sizzling in my veins. I refused to sit meekly, waiting for my fate. They had stolen a cherished moment from me, one that was supposed to be a celebration of our family. Now the only celebration I wanted was watching them squirm under the weight of their lie. At Grandma's, I found her in the kitchen, quietly tidying up. Her eyes lifted to meet mine, filled with understanding. "They're returning soon. Whatever they're hiding, you'll get to confront them face to face," she said gently, as if reading my mind. I nodded, feeling an ache behind my eyes. "I'm just so angry, Grandma. I don't know if I can keep it in." "You don't have to keep it in, sweetheart," she soothed. "Just remember, they are still your parents. You might find they were pressured, or misguided, or made some unbelievably poor choice. But that doesn't mean you have to forgive them immediately. Just take care of your heart." Her words resonated, yet my fury remained undiminished. That night, I stared at the ceiling of the guest room, replaying every scenario of how the confrontation might go. I imagined storming up to them the moment they set foot in the house, brandishing the binder with my mother's scribbled note. I pictured screaming, tears, raw emotional confessions. And in each scenario, I never felt relief, only a deep well of pain and longing for the parents I thought I knew. Day 7 arrived the day of their return. Typically, they would disembark the ship early in the morning, drive a few hours from the port, and arrive home by late afternoon or early evening. I decided to position myself at Grandma's house, believing they'd come straight to me, or at least call. But as the hours wore on, there was silence. No text, no call, no knock at the door. Around sunset, I couldn't stand it anymore. "Grandma, I'm going to our house," I announced, pacing restlessly in the living room. "They might think I'm at home waiting." "Go then." She handed me the car keys. "I'll be here if you need me." I drove through the dusky streets, my stomach churning. Pulling into our driveway, I saw my parents' car parked there, the trunk still full of luggage. That alone was enough to make me tremble with nerves. They were back, and they hadn't even tried to see me or contact me yet. I marched up to the front door, took a deep breath, and walked in. The living room lights were on. Suitcases rested near the door. My parents stood there as though waiting for me, while James sat on the couch, arms crossed tightly over his chest. My mother's face was drawn, her eyes rimmed with exhaustion. My father looked equally strained, a forced smile ghosting his lips. James stared at me like I was a ticking time bomb. The tension was a living thing in the air. Dad finally broke the silence. "Samantha, you're here." "Yes," I seethed, fighting the burning urge to shout. "I've been here actually. I've been at Grandma's this entire week. The week you told me she was dying in a hospital bed." I couldn't stop my voice from quivering in anger. Mom stepped forward, lifting her hands as though in surrender. "Sweetie, no," I snapped. "Don't you dare call me that. You lied. You told me Grandma was dying, and she's perfectly fine. Why would you do that? Why did you make me stay behind while you all went on a cruise?" They glanced uneasily at each other. For a heart-stopping moment, I wondered if they would double down on their lie, but Mum swallowed hard. We had our reasons, Samantha, she began, her voice trembling. It wasn't something we wanted to do, but it was your father's idea. She shot him a look that brimmed with resentment, but we both agreed it was for the best. My father's eyes flashed. Don't pin it all on me, he growled, then turned to me, his expression softer. Look, Sam, I know this was unfair, but you have to understand. We've been dealing with something we didn't want you to be part of. What? Something so terrible you had to lie that Grandma was in the hospital. My fists clenched at my sides. I can't even wrap my head around this. A silence stretched between us, thick with unspoken truths. Finally, Mum exhaled shakily. We'll explain, but it's complicated. Maybe we should all sit down. The thought of calmly sitting on the couch made me want to explode. Still, I recognized I wouldn't learn anything if I stormed out. So I obliged, perching stiffly on the edge of an armchair. They settled across from me, Dad and Mom on the sofa, with James awkwardly moving aside to give them space. His eyes wouldn't meet mine. Dad launched into a stilted explanation. Apparently, there was some sort of investment opportunity on the cruise. He used those words, though his tone suggested there was more to it. He claimed that he and Mom had gotten involved in a high-stakes plan with a group of acquaintances who had promised big returns. The cruise was partly a pleasure trip, partly a meeting with potential investors. They had known about this for months, yet they never told me. They were worried about how I might react or if I would inadvertently sabotage the deal because I have a tendency to ask too many questions and cause a scene, or so he claimed. The pit in my stomach grew. So you were ashamed of me? That's your reason? Mum sighed. No, not ashamed. But you can be headstrong. We couldn't afford for you to blow this opportunity for us. We needed financial security, especially now that James is out of college and you're still figuring out your path. My anger flared white hot. So you lied about Grandma's health and left me behind like some embarrassment you needed to hide. You couldn't just tell me you needed a quiet environment to meet investors. Dad shifted uncomfortably. We were afraid you'd be hurt or try to come along anyway. The trip was expensive and we needed it to go perfectly. A harsh laugh escaped me. So your grand plan was to claim Grandma was dying, and you never even considered how that might affect me emotionally. My voice cracked, emotion brimming. James finally spoke, his voice low. I told them it was a bad idea, he said, glancing at me, but I also wanted to be on the cruise. I didn't want to lose out on the opportunity, so I just went along with it. I'm sorry. I stared at him, betrayal carving deep lines into my heart. He could have warned me, at least given me a hint. Instead, he'd chosen himself over me. Dad cleared his throat. We apologize, Sam, truly. But this investment, it was critical for our family's future. We needed it to pay off so we can help put you through college or help you realize your own dreams. My chest felt tight, tears threatening to spill. You expect me to believe this is for my own good? I choked out a bitter laugh. You traumatized me. You broke my heart. And for what? Some shady business deal on a cruise ship? That is not how you protect or support family. My parents exchanged guilty looks, and I could sense they hoped their apology might mitigate the damage. But they had no clue about the whirlwind of rage and betrayal swirling within me. They'd undone the very foundation of our relationship. One apology wasn't going to fix that. Unable to bear the stifling tension a moment longer, I sprang from my seat. I'm going to Grandma's, I declared. Don't follow me. I need time to think and trust me. This is not over. Before they could protest, I was out the door, my mind churning. Their sorry excuse that they left me behind for fear I'd disrupt their precious investment meeting was beyond insulting. What truly stung was that they'd convinced themselves this was somehow justified. Even more painful was how easily James had gone along with it. As I climbed into my car, I felt my soul harden. My parents had done the unthinkable. Now, all I could think of was how to make them feel the gravity of what they had done, to not only unmask their deception, but to ensure they never considered such a betrayal again. That night, I tossed and turned on Grandma's sofa, my emotions raw. She insisted I take her bed, but I couldn't bear the thought. I felt like my skin was crawling, too restless for sleep. My mind replayed every word my parents had uttered, dissecting each phrase for hidden meanings. An investment opportunity on a cruise. Something about the notion still didn't sit right. Yes, there are business seminars and networking events on large cruise ships occasionally, but it all sounded secretive, especially the part where they claimed they couldn't afford for me to blow it. Were they implying my presence alone was enough to sabotage them? The rational part of me said. Maybe my fiery personality or rebellious streak had them worried, but the hurt part of me seethed with indignation. They'd resorted to the cruelest method imaginable to exclude me. As dawn broke, the first slivers of pale light creeping through the curtains, I resolved to stop letting them call the shots. My entire life, I'd sought their approval, rarely daring to challenge their authority beyond the usual teenage mischief. Now, something in me had changed. They'd broken the unspoken rule that binds a family together, honesty, or at least a baseline respect. And if they wanted to see me as the rebellious daughter who asked too many questions, then maybe I'd fulfill that role in a way they never expected. Grandma found me in the kitchen, staring out the window at the dew-kissed backyard. She put on a pot of coffee, then quietly joined me at the table. They came by late last night, she said gently, eyes flicking toward the front door. I sent them away. You needed space. A surge of gratitude filled me. I couldn't have asked for a better ally. Grandma was as gentle as a breeze, but steadfast as a rock when it came to protecting me. Thank you, I murmured, holding my mug like a lifeline. What are you going to do, Sam? She asked softly. I watched steam curl from the mug. I'm not entirely sure, but I know I can't just pretend everything is fine, and I can't let them get away with thinking that a simple apology is enough. She laid a reassuring hand over mine. Whatever you decide, I stand with you, but be careful. Revenge can be a poison you swallow hoping it hurts the other person. She was right, of course. But even so, the urge for retribution had taken root in my heart. It wasn't just a petty desire to hurt them back. It was a need to reveal the ugly truth they tried to hide. Maybe then they'd realize the magnitude of their betrayal. Maybe they'd see me as someone they couldn't so easily manipulate. While Grandma tidied up, I moved to the living room, flipping open my laptop. I had an idea, admittedly a slightly vindictive one, to harness social media. My mother, in particular, was an avid user. She prided herself on curating a polished social image, posting pictures of our happy family, to gather likes and admiration. What if I told the real story? I imagined drafting a post that laid it all out, the painful lie, the betrayal, the emotional fallout. But something held me back. Airing my family's dirty laundry online wasn't guaranteed to heal anything. It might only lead to more drama, and I didn't want to sabotage my own dignity in the process. No, I needed something more targeted, something that would force them to confront the truth. Perhaps confronting them publicly, but not on social media. The idea of orchestrating a family gathering or capturing their confession on video flitted through my mind. I wasn't entirely sure how to pull it off yet. Frustration gnawed at me. My father kept repeating that this was about an investment. If that was the real reason behind this fiasco, I wanted to see for myself what exactly was so important that they'd sacrifice their relationship with me. Perhaps if I dug deeper, I'd discover they were hiding more than just unscrupulous behavior. Maybe the deal was illegal or borderline fraudulent. If I could expose that, they'd have no choice but to face the consequences of their deceit. I recalled how Dad used to meticulously document everything, especially contracts or important agreements. He had a system, digital copies stored in his laptop, with backups on a portable hard drive. If I could access that hard drive, maybe I'd find clues. My heart raced as I realized I knew exactly where he kept it in his locked drawer, that same one I'd already pried open. We hadn't dug through it thoroughly enough to find any electronic devices, but maybe it was hidden in another part of his office. When Grandma left for her weekly grocery run, I decided to seize the moment. I drove back to my parents' house, hoping they might be out, or at least keep their distance if they were home. The place was silent when I pulled up. Inside, I found Dad's office exactly as I'd left it after my initial search. The desk drawer was still ajar from my forced entry. Stepping carefully, I scoured the bookshelves, rifling through a series of dull encyclopedias and dusty folders. Then, behind an old atlas, I found a small black plastic box. My pulse quickened as I opened it. It was the portable hard drive. My heart pounded. This might be it, the gateway to the truth. I carefully tucked the hard drive in my bag and hurried out, driving back to Grandma's with a swirl of adrenaline coursing through me. After ensuring the device was safe, I booted up my laptop and connected it. It asked for a password, but Dad often used the same passcode for everything: an anniversary date or a phone number. My fingers typed in my parents' wedding anniversary. No luck. James's birthday. No. My birthday. Nothing. Anxiety flickered. Could he have changed his habits? I tried the year we moved into our house. Incorrect. Feeling unsettled, I took a breath. Maybe Dad was more cautious than I realized. Then it struck me: Grandma's birthday. Dad always revered her and often used that date for special codes. Holding my breath, I typed in the numbers. The lock icon disappeared. Relief flooded me. Inside, I found folders labeled with cryptic names: Project A, Meeting Docs, Investor Info, and so on. I clicked through them, scanning spreadsheets, contracts, and presentations. It looked suspiciously like a multi-level marketing scheme, or some questionable investment club promising massive returns for minimal input. My parents' names were on some of the documents, alongside signatures from people I didn't recognize. There were also suspicious references to contributions and new leads, reminding me of pyramid scams. The more I read, the clearer it became this so-called investment was built on shaky ground, if not outright fraudulent. My parents had risked lying to me and tarnishing our relationship for what seemed like a get-rich-quick scheme. My emotions roiled, part of me wanting to confront them immediately and throw the evidence in their faces. But I realized I needed a plan. If I could show them I knew everything, maybe they'd be forced to see how terrible their choices were and that they couldn't hide behind excuses anymore. More importantly, I could protect them from this cataclysmic gamble if it really was a scam. Ironically, by seeking my own form of justice, I might also save them from financial and legal ruin. Still, I wrestled with heartbreak. These were my parents, the people who were supposed to guide me, protect me, not embroil me in a web of lies. The betrayal ate at me, a toxic mixture of sorrow and fury. But if I played my cards right, I could take back my power. I could show them I was not a naive bystander to be manipulated or cast aside. And in doing so, I might just tear down their precarious tower of lies. Morning light filtered through Grandma's curtains the next day, illuminating dust motes floating in the air. I spent hours hunched over my laptop, printing crucial documents, labeling them meticulously. The more I dove into the labyrinthine details, the more convinced I became that my parents had fallen prey to a con artist, pitching a too-good-to-be-true venture. They'd not only risked their money but dragged my brother along. And in their twisted logic, they had excluded me to make sure the illusions remained intact in front of these shady investors. I contemplated telling Grandma everything, but I hesitated, unsure if burdening her with these details would help. She already knew I felt betrayed. Telling her about the potential financial fiasco could break her heart even more. For now, I decided, she didn't need to shoulder that load. I'd keep the truth close until I was ready to blow it wide open. Instead, I called a friend who had just finished law school, a bright woman named Vanessa. We weren't best friends, but we were close enough that I trusted her discretion. When she heard my story, albeit a condensed version, she was both appalled and intrigued. "Sam, this sounds illegal," she said flatly. "I know," I replied, my voice shaky. They basically shut me out so they could chase this pipe dream. Vanessa offered to examine the documents with me. We met at a quiet corner of the local library that afternoon, the hum of the air conditioner and the soft rustling of pages serving as our backdrop. Together, we pored over the printouts, her legal knowledge a guiding light. She flagged multiple points that indicated signs of a Ponzi or pyramid-like structure. "These are definitely red flags," she murmured, tapping her pen against one especially damning contract. "If your parents move forward with this, they could lose everything, or worse, be implicated if the scheme collapses." A chill spread through me. My parents had lied to me in the cruelest way, but the idea of them being arrested or losing their home was still horrifying. No matter how angry I was, I didn't want them destroyed. At least not like that. "What do I do?" I asked. My voice barely above a whisper. She set the papers aside and faced me. "You have the upper hand right now. You have the evidence. You can confront them, but do so wisely. If they refuse to listen, you might have to get outside authorities involved. But start by laying it all out, calmly if you can. Sometimes the best revenge is preventing them from continuing down a path that will ruin them. Her words stuck with me. Perhaps revenge could serve a dual purpose, not just punishing them, but saving them from themselves. In a twisted sense, they'd see how wrong they were to exclude me and lie, and also see that I had the power to bring this all crashing down. I thanked Vanessa, gathering the documents. She wished me luck, cautioning me to stay safe and keep evidence of everything. My heart pounded with anticipation as I drove back to Grandma's, a swirl of conflicting emotions inside me: anger, hurt, concern, and a faint hope that maybe this confrontation would bring a long overdue reckoning. When I arrived, Grandma was on the phone, her expression troubled. She handed me the receiver. "It's your mother," she said softly. I steeled myself and pressed the phone to my ear. "Hello?" "Samantha," Mom began, hesitating as though uncertain how to proceed. "Can we talk? Your father and I, realize how badly we hurt you." I exhaled. The memory of Dad's stony face swam before me. "What do you want from me, Mom?" "We just want to explain. We want to fix this," she pleaded. "Can you come home so we can talk properly?" My eyes flicked to the stack of documents in my bag. Maybe it was time to do exactly that. "Fine," I said. "I'll be there, but be ready for what I have to say." She paused, possibly taken aback by my assertive tone. "All right, see you soon." Hanging up, I slid the phone back to Grandma. She looked concerned. "Be careful, my dear. I don't want them turning this around on you." I nodded, giving her a reassuring squeeze of the hand. "Don't worry. This time, I'm in control." 20 minutes later, I found myself standing before my parents in the living room, where they'd first broken my heart. My father's brow was furrowed. Mum's eyes darted nervously. James hovered in the corner, guilty and silent. I placed a thick folder of papers on the coffee table. "You wanted to talk? Fine, let's talk. How about we start with the real reason you left me behind?" My father's eyes flickered to the documents. "Sam, we already told you. Don't insult my intelligence," I snapped, cutting him off. "You left me behind because you were worried I'd ruin your precious business meetings on the ship." I opened the folder, revealing the copies of the suspicious contracts. "But it's not just any meeting, is it? This is a pyramid scheme or something close to it, and you're both complicit if it goes south." Mum's face drained of colour, and Dad's jaw tightened. "Where? How did you get these?" he stammered. I shrugged, feigning nonchalance. "You locked them away, but apparently not well enough." James stepped forward, peering at the documents. "Dad, is this real? I never saw anything like that on the cruise. I only heard about some seminars." Dad shot him a stern look. "It's not what you think, James. These are legitimate opportunities that just require a certain buy-in to the network. It's a group of investors, entrepreneurs, a group of con artists," I interrupted, jabbing a finger at one of the pages. "Here's the breakdown of the commissions. To get your returns, you need to recruit more investors, who in turn have to recruit even more. It's a classic pyramid. You know who benefits? The people at the top." Mum sank onto the couch, clutching her forehead. "Your father said it was safe. That it was an easy way to secure our future. And your future, too." "My future?" I scoffed. "You lied to me about Grandma's health to secure my future. You're not just gullible, you're morally compromised. All because you think this scam will make you rich." Dad's face was a mask of fury and embarrassment. "Samantha, lower your voice. We're still your parents, and you owe us respect." I slammed the folder shut, the sharp crack echoing around the room. "Respect? You lost that privilege when you made me think Grandma was dying." My voice quivered, but I pressed on. "Do you have any idea what that did to me? The nights I spent terrified, thinking she might die at any moment? You traumatized me so you could chase a shady investment." James paced in the corner, his head in his hands. "Dad, Mom, I can't believe you would do this. I thought we were going on a family celebration, not some sneaky business trip." Dad opened his mouth to speak, but I raised a hand. "No, I'm not finished. You wanted me out of the picture because you knew I'd question everything. You thought I'd embarrass you in front of your new associates, or maybe you worried I'd see right through their lies. Either way, you broke my trust. You lied about the one person in my life who's always been there for me. And you know what? If you go through with this scheme, you'll lose everything, including me." A thick silence blanketed the room. Mum began to cry softly, tears streaking her cheeks. Dad looked like he'd been punched in the gut. James just stared at me, wide-eyed, as if seeing me in a new light. Finally, Dad cleared his throat. Sam, I'm sorry. I didn't realize how much this would hurt you. We thought we were doing what was best. Sometimes parents make mistakes. Don't you dare trivialize this, I spat. This isn't a small mistake. This is a catastrophic betrayal. Not only that, but you might be committing fraud. He swallowed, clenching and unclenching his fists. I don't know if it's fraud. You were told lies. I cut him off. I have enough evidence here to expose this entire racket. And if you don't walk away, I'll do exactly that. I'll protect you from yourselves if I have to, even if it means turning this over to the authorities. A shocked gasp escaped my mother. You wouldn't. I held her gaze, unflinching. I would. This is bigger than just me missing a cruise. The fact you're both so blinded by greed that you can't see you're being conned is terrifying. If you lose all your money, if you face legal consequences that affects all of us. And I refuse to let you drag me or Grandma down with you. James stepped in, placing a hand on Dad's shoulder. Dad, she's right. This is shady. We can't move forward with it. My father's eyes were red, turmoil etched into every line of his face. I never wanted to hurt you, Sam. I'm tired of living paycheck to paycheck. Tired of feeling like I can't provide the life my family deserves. Your mother and we just wanted to finally catch a break. My anger was tempered slightly by the raw vulnerability in his tone. I can understand wanting a better life, I murmured, my voice softer. But you went about it in the worst possible way. You manipulated me, and you lied about Grandma's life being in danger. That's not seeking a better life, that's destroying the one you have. My mother sobbed openly now, tears dripping onto her blouse. Sammy, we don't want to lose you. We see now how wrong we were. Please, help us fix this. For the first time, I sensed genuine remorse and desperation in their eyes. Still, the wound they'd inflicted was deep. I'm not the one who needs to fix it. It's on you. I've given you the tools, the evidence. Walk away. Report these con artists, or at least refuse to sign anything further. If you keep pursuing it, I won't hesitate to expose you all, because I won't be part of it. Dad nodded slowly, exhaustion weighing on him like a heavy blanket. We'll stop, he whispered. I'll call them. We'll pull out. I promise. I didn't trust his words entirely, but it was a start. I stood there, arms folded, adrenaline still pumping. Part of me wanted to scream and break things, to vent the raw betrayal still burning in my chest. But another part of me felt a swell of triumph, an odd vindication. They had lied to me, but I had turned the tables. I had the power to protect myself, and I'd proven it. Mom rose shakily to her feet. We understand if you can't forgive us. But can you at least give us a chance to make this right? A chance to earn back your trust? I swallowed, tears of my own threatening to fall. That's going to take time, a lot of time. You can start by making a genuine apology to Grandma. And then, we'll see. They nodded, subdued and chastened, as if struck by a thunderbolt. James looked at me with something akin to awe. Sam, I'm sorry I didn't step up for you before. I should have questioned things. I was just excited about the cruise. I promise, I'll be better. I gave him a curt nod. It wasn't a full reconciliation, but it was a tiny step forward. Without another word, I turned and left, taking my folder of documents with me, leaving behind a hush that was as heavy as it was liberating. I knew that the path ahead would be fraught with the tangled wreckage of betrayal, hurt, and distrust. But I also knew something else. I had reclaimed my power. Over the following weeks, my parents began unraveling the tangled mess they had created. They confronted their so-called investment partners, demanding refunds and threatening legal action if necessary. I watched from a distance, staying at Grandma's house, where I finally felt safe. My anger hadn't vanished, but I slowly learned how to channel it into productive resolve, rather than letting it consume me. In the midst of my parents' turmoil, I found a new purpose in my own life. I applied to a creative writing program at a nearby university, something I'd always dreamed of, but never fully pursued. Grandma and I spent long hours crafting my application essay, sipping tea at her kitchen table until late at night. Each paragraph I wrote felt like a quiet act of defiance, a declaration that I would shape my own future rather than be bound by my parents' schemes. While I focused on these plans, my parents took tentative steps to regain my trust. My father wrote me a letter every night for a week, each one more remorseful than the last, describing the guilt and fear he'd been wrestling with. My mother showed up unexpectedly at Grandma's door, bearing homemade meals and teary-eyed apologies. Though their regret seemed sincere, I wasn't yet ready to forgive. The memory of their lie of the nights I spent terrified for Grandma's life had carved a wound too deep to heal instantly. In small ways, though, I began to see change. My father set aside his obsession with get-rich-quick plans and took on extra shifts at work, determined to pay down the debt from that disastrous cruise deal. My mother sold off some of her expensive handbags, putting the money toward our household expenses. They visited Grandma often, helping maintain her garden and fixing up small things around her house, as if each act of service could mend a fraction of the hurt they'd caused. For me, reclaiming my sense of security meant building boundaries. I decided to keep living at Grandma's until I felt ready to be under the same roof as my parents. I insisted that all future discussions about finances or family decisions include me. Little by little, my resentment found a cautious outlet in moments of honest conversation, when I could see genuine guilt in my parents' eyes and genuine regret in their words. Eventually, an acceptance letter arrived from the writing program. I felt my pulse quicken as I held the envelope, a tangible symbol of hope and possibility one my parents had nearly denied me. Stepping outside, I breathed in the crisp evening air and realized something important. Although their lie had cut me deeply, it had also awakened a powerful resolve inside me. They had once tried to shield me from life's realities in the cruelest way possible. But now, in taking my future into my own hands, I discovered a resilience I hadn't known before. I was no longer the daughter left behind by deceit. I was the person in control of my story. Thank you for joining me on this journey of heartbreak, betrayal, and ultimately, redemption. My parents' cruel deception taught me how fragile trust can be and how fiercely we must fight to protect it. Yet, through the painful lessons, I discovered a newfound strength and self-respect that no lie can ever take away. If this story resonated with you, or if you found hope in my struggle, please help share this message of resilience. Give this video a like, drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe to my channel to stay connected. Every share and subscription helps us build a community where we can talk about the trials of family, forgiveness, and finding our power. Remember, you are not alone in your journey. Together, we can transform pain into purpose and reclaim our own voices along the way.